Unstable Vitals is the podcast that takes the pulse of American healthcare, and the prognosis is critical. Dr. Adam Brown and Dr. Lara Zibners, physicians turned entrepreneurs and business leaders, expose why the system is unraveling before our eyes.
Well, hello everyone. It's time for another great episode of Unstable Vitals. I mean, I'm saying it's a great episode, and that sounds like it's just because Laura and myself are on it, but it actually has nothing to do with you or me. It just has to do with me.
I mean, if we're not here though, then it's just somebody that nobody knows just sitting here staring at.
Right. No, it's exciting because Allison Komiyama is with us today.
Yay!
Now, for those that do not know Allison, and apparently there are a lot of people that know Allison, but for those that don't know her, she has a really cool podcast called Bluestocking Health. Did I say the podcast right? I know that's
the podcast is Bluestock Talk. The website is bluestocking.health. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. But here's what is kind of cool. I was at a Medtech conference up in Minneapolis last week, and I had 3 completely separate conversations with people while we were sitting at the table and stuff, and people would go like, you know who you need to talk with? There's this lady. Her name is Allison. And do you know Allison? And I'm like, which Allison? I know lots of Allisons. We've had another Allison on our podcast. We've had 2 other Allisons.
And you know what, though? Then they start to fuck with you because a lot of Allisons spell their name differently, right? So it's like, is this the 1L Allison or is this the Allison with a Y?
Oh, very true.
And speaking... Okay, well, anyway, go on.
Yeah, so anyway, 3 separate conversations. Do I know Allison Komiyama? And I did, because I was on her podcast, which was a lot of fun. And they were on her podcast too. So it was just a really cool conversation. And she falls in the good girl to know category. I think they called it something like that. She's the good one to know. She's a cool person.
I think that's a good hashtag for this.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Good one
so we were I was very excited about that. But we are glad to have you on today to talk about, what are we going to talk about, Allison? Because I'm seeing something in your shirt.
First, aren't we supposed to talk about ourselves?
Yeah. I'm getting to that, but I just want to highlight the shirt. It's so
the shirt is awesome.
It's looking backwards for me right now, so hopefully
I can read it. This is just how Adam gets me to stare at your boobs. There's a medical device for that.
Because everybody knows
it doesn't take much to stare at them. I mean,
is a bra considered a medical device?
Depends on what it does. There are some for healing and for holding.
So the over-the-shoulder boulder holder could require FDA clearance.
Depends on the indications.
Okay, we're going to get to that in a second.
So isn't that cool? Okay, so Laura, what have you been, before we get to Allison, what have you been doing the last couple of weeks since we've talked last?
I've been dealing with this thing I have called children.
Oh, those are also called a sexually transmitted disease in some ways. They last for over...
Except in my case, they're called hundreds of thousands of dollars and fingerprints by the FBI.
Everywhere.
Right? I did not get drunk and get knocked up. No, I did it the circuitous route.
Mm-hmm.
We're here in Austria and school does not break up until June 26th. So when other people are like, I'm in the middle of summer, I'm like, my summer has not started. That said, it is barreling towards me and I've got to figure out how I'm going to get my 3 children to 3 different locations for 3 different camps. And one of them is going to Missoula, Montana. So yesterday I was like, pretty please, honey, I'll give you the cost of the plane ticket if you just get on the plane by yourself and don't make me take you to Missoula. But she's going to think about it for 24 hours and let me know. So that's what I'm doing. I'm dealing with end of year exams. I'm dealing with SATs. I'm dealing with burnout. I'm dealing with exam anxiety. I'm dealing with summer plans. That's what I've been doing. How about you? How about you, Adam?
So came back to London. So we're here for a while. I'm very happy about some trees that I bought. So I'm excited that they have survived. I mean, this is like big stuff.
You know, that reminds me, when I was adopting my first baby, the social worker was coming to the house and I was terrified that he would want to go out onto the deck because I had bought this plant that cost me an arm and a leg, and it was called a black boy. And it's this plant that is made to withstand like brush fires in like New Zealand or something. It can survive anything. And I had it for like 2 weeks and I killed the motherfucker. Yeah, I did. He was dead. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a social worker coming to my house to see if I can have a baby. And there's a dead, indestructible plant on my porch.
And clearly not. No, but okay. So I have to tell you guys, there's actually something really cool. I'm just looking it up. So I
also don't think they call them that anymore, because
I don't think
you don't think they're called that?
Didn't hold up well. Yeah.
No, I don't think they should.
This was just a few years ago. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, I know, but I would kind of avoid.
Yeah.
So yesterday I went to the Tate Modern, the Tate Modern Art Museum, and it was really cool. But let me tell you guys why I learned a lot of stuff. So one of the things I learned was they had an exhibition with the Gorilla Girls. Okay, do you know who those are? They are amazing, where they kind of highlight injustice, inequality in artwork, but also in politics. And one of the really interesting kind of big mural type things they had this woman naked laying out with a gorilla mask, even though this is gorilla spelled like guerrilla warfare. But it's like, do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? ? Less than 4% of artists in modern art sections are women, but 76% of the nudes are female.
Naked penis.
I do, but like
that's just, it's weird looking. It's like a little, it's like looking at a blind mole who's just come out.
Stop it. But so that was one. And then it's like, how many works by women artists were in the Andy Warhol and Tremaine auctions at Sotheby's?
None.
0.
Well, because they were Andy Warhol auctions.
Well, this is true, but the point is, I mean, it was quite impactful. And so that is something that I thought was great. And it really ties in, Laura, to a lot of the work that you and I are doing around menopausal education.
Yep.
What we've been highlighting, that there is a dearth of dollars going into women's health, that women were not even a part of clinical trials until just a couple of decades ago.
51% of the population is not niche.
So exactly 51% is not niche, and it was the same in art. It's almost like there's inequality all out. I mean,
it's like there's inequality everywhere. That
Boom. All right, so that's what I did recently.
Now that you framed it that way, I'm seeing the world differently.
Right. I mean, me, the guy.
My eyes.
That just opened my eyes.
I'm telling you, like me, that guy with the Y chromosome is like, oh my gosh, this is a new problem.
Do you know? I used to think that the Y chromosome was just a broken off X, but I learned that it shares a genetic ancestor with the X chromosome, but it shrunk and it transferred a lot of its necessary genes over to the X. So the X's are bigger, which is why in women you have to inactivate one of the X's so you don't get like toxic overproduction of proteins. So it's not just a broken X; it's actually like a shriveled broken X.
I don't like this description, and so with that, we're going to talk
Hi,
about
Allison.
It's so good to see.
This has been great. I'm just kidding. Can I just say I learned something. Bethany Corbin, who was on my podcast of Bluestock Talk, she had said women are 51% of the population, but we make 80% of the medical decisions.
That's right.
Because it's not just for our health; it's for our kids and even for the ones that we're caregivers for our parents and that generation. So it's like we're
no joke.
Like case.
My daughter went to the dentist. She's 16 and a half years old, right? And she said, I have to go back. And I said, why? She goes, I don't know. I'm like, so you were at the dentist and you managed that by yourself, but you don't know why you have to go back to the dentist? No, don't know. Well, so I called the dentist and they said, yes, because she has a cavity. And I was like, oh, right. So to your point, moms do everything.
Hey, well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not doing it. I'm not a mom. So but I am the food distribution engineer of my home, Don't tell Steve that, but like he's the beverage distribution engineer, which is a really important coffee, liquor, wine.
That's up here.
That's up here. And then I'm just food, but anyway, so I wanted to bring Allison onto this conversation because we're talking about how unstable the healthcare system is. And one of the really interesting things, and especially since I work with a lot of medical device companies, and Laura, you kind of work with a medical device company, don't you?
I'm a medical device company.
Yeah, you are one.
Yeah.
it's how these devices are solving some of the major medical problems, and how, in addition to that, like, that is an area that's continuing to grow. And it's going through challenges just like the rest of the healthcare system. But what I've found so interesting is those entrepreneurs, those innovators, those people that are trying to develop things, they're actively working hard to make an unstable system better and better for patients. And so when Alice and I had a conversation, I was like, she would be amazing to be on this call because she works with all of these different companies. And she was one of those individuals in the 3-letter word kind of company, a 3-letter government agency that regulated those things.
Are those called eponyms? Is that called an eponym? No, that's when you put somebody's name.
That's an acronym, right? Maybe like the FDA.
Anyway, I think when I started with Cal Lilly, I did not know how devices got cleared, which is shocking when you're a doctor and you use devices all the time. And when you find out the truth, it's kind of disturbing. So let's stop talking and let Allison talk.
Yeah. So Allison, tell us about yourself, please.
I'll start off by saying big fan of Cal Lilly. So I'm going to start there. I actually met one of your team members at LSI, I think a year ago or so. And I just was like, this is the coolest product.
Well, I was at LSI last year, but maybe Tang was there the year before. So maybe.
Yeah, I think it was the year before.
Yeah.
I've been every year. Last year, I just went to go hang out at the bar. I was like, I'm not going to pay for the ticket this year, but I had some people I wanted to meet up with. But I digress. I'm getting off topic. I am a Medtech hype woman. That's my new phrase that I've been using for myself, because I did work at FDA. So I did all my schooling and I was like, I don't want to stay in academia, but I want to stay academia adjacent. So I worked at FDA. I freaking loved it. I've told so many people, I'm like, I'd probably still be there if I hadn't had a 2-body problem. My husband got a job at UC San Diego.
2-body problem. Oh,
yeah.
I like that.
So I was like, okay, let's go. I'm going home, which was great because we had 2 kids soon after, and my parents still live here. Actually, that's where my kids are right now. Because as you were saying, Lara, like all the summer camps, like school ended, and now they're just free range children. And so my mom was like, I'll take them. Let me take them for you. I was like, yes, thank you so much.
And can we back up? You didn't just do some schooling. You got like a PhD from Stanford.
Yeah,
no, you did.
Yeah, I did in neuroscience. So I can't say I was.
You got brain cells.
I'm really good at dissecting third instar larvae, Drosophila.
I could say that you're just really good at being super smart. Like that's like, because anyone who's a neuroscientist usually by default are pretty smart, you know?
I mean, smart in what way? I feel like sometimes, there were times.
I'm with you, because like doesn't mean I can beat my way out of a wet paper bag without assistance, right, just because I got all these degrees, right?
Yeah.
But I still think, at least on paper, it's got some street cred. Anyway, so go ahead. So you did all this. You got to tell us your background. You got a bunch.
So I worked at FDA. I was a reviewer. Came to San Diego and I started consulting. So I was first in a small company. I then started my own company. I then sold that company. I then quit that company I worked for them for almost 4 years. And then recently, as of 2025, I went into what as I said, like media or Medtech hype company that I started. So Bluestocking Health, which is really just a space that I wanted to talk about how cool medical devices are and like how medtech is changing our lives, how, too often we hear like, ask your doctor about this pharmaceutical. Instead, we should be saying, well, is there a device for that? And I often will say, like, there is a medical device for that. Like, you should consider it. And it might not work for you. Of course, there's of course risks with anything out there. I often will say, like, even tongue depressors can give you splinters, right? So it's not like there's zero risk to anything, but maybe it's another thing that needs to enter the conversation more frequently. So it really is talking to patients, talking to physicians, And I will always say, like, we're all patients, right? Like, we're either going to start in a hospital, end in one, or be in one along the way. So how do we get those conversations to more people? So it really is like amplifying that and talking about just conversations that I feel like needed to happen a long time ago.
I think what's interesting is, so you're an FDA reviewer. A lot of people don't know what that means. And so we'll go into that in just a second. But something that you said, I think is very clear. When we oftentimes think of medical device, we're thinking about some piece of hardware that's like, an orthopedic rod or something like that. But Lara's a demonstration that, her company that creates a vaginal drug delivery device through what looks kind of like a tampon, but is not fully, because it does other things. That's a medical device. Actually, some AI software is a medical device.
The tampon underneath our underlying technology, tampons in the US are considered class 2 medical devices.
Yeah.
Not other countries though, right? In the UK, it's not a medical device.
Right. And so some AI technology tools and software can be a medical device. But you mentioned there's drugs for certain conditions. There's medical devices now that are trying to treat hypertension through different ways. There's a lot of different types of activities out there for conditions that we typically would have thought, well, that's a condition treated by a drug, actually could be treated by a medical device. So to that point, I wanted to say you are an FDA reviewer. And so the FDA functions in medical devices in what way, and what were you reviewing? Go.
So FDA has lots of different centers, right? So you probably heard a lot about the Center for Tobacco recently for many reasons. There's the Center for Drugs, the Center for Biologics, and the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. So things that have radiation or radiation emitting. And they look, especially the CDRH where I worked, it really focuses on what is the safety and the effectiveness of those devices. And so there's different pathways of getting through FDA and getting your device to market. And for 15 years, that's what I did. I helped companies, after leaving FDA, I helped companies with their 510K or their de novo or their PMA or their clinical study, which is an investigational device exemption or an IDE. And so what are the ways that you communicate with FDA, right? Because it's not big, bad FDA. FDA is actually oftentimes trying to protect and promote, right, to get things through. And so there are very set processes in order to review your device and get it to market. And I think for so long I saw FDA as this is the most important piece because I lived in it. I was there, and then I was helping these companies get through. And I felt that as soon as things got through FDA, I would be like, bye, see you later. Good luck with your marketing. And then I realized, oh no, that's kind of the starting line.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, Lara, I'm sure you're going through it with as a combination product and just different ways, how does FDA define those things? And then what are ways that we can work together with FDA, hopefully, right? My goal is always how do we actually have those conversations, work together to then get it to market, and then how do we stay on market?
You mentioned something about the 510K, PMA, de novo. Those are all different types of processes for getting a device through and review processes. And from 510K, which usually leans on or does lean on other devices that have been out on the market before that are somewhat like the new one that you're reviewing. So if someone has a new contact lens, let's say, or someone has a new defibrillator, if there's been another defibrillator out before, that's called a predicate device, and that could potentially go through, one of these processes. So, 510K, that's maybe not, but but anyway, the point here is that it's been criticized, that 510K process has been criticized a bit for allowing some devices to reach patients based on similarities of old devices versus fresh kind of evidence. You've been inside that system, you've lived it, you reviewed those things. Is that criticism fair?
Sometimes. I feel like, it's a yes and kind of response. I think it's a lack of understanding of the process oftentimes, because I think a lot of people will hear what a 510K entails, right? Which is substantial equivalence. Are you as safe and as effective as something that's already been cleared and put on the market? And personally, I wouldn't want every single device to require clinical evidence in order to make it through the FDA process. If anything, that seems a little burdensome, especially if it's a device that's well understood. It's, something that's been demonstrated to be effective over decades. And if there's a technological difference or something that's changed about this new device, it would make sense to me that let's compare it. Let's do either bench testing, animal testing, what sort of performance testing needs to be done in order to show that it's still safe and that it's likely to still be as effective. So I think there's ways to do it. I think oftentimes it's just broken down with the lack of communicate or like the lack of education, right? So a lot of what I'm trying to do as well with Bluestocking Health is meducation. And so trying to help people understand, like, what is the pre-submission process? Like, what are the ways that you can talk to FDA? How come 510Ks only need 10%? Only 10% of them actually include clinical data oftentimes. And it's one of those that FDA says, well, because of this change, we're not comfortable with just bench testing. So you will need some clinical evidence, right? And we've seen that for bioresorbable devices. We've seen it for certain new energy sources, right? That FDA is like, well, we need some clinical to support that. So I think it's misguided oftentimes, and I think the Institute of Medicine came out with a pretty scathing review of the 510K program years ago. And I felt that it was, so many people are like, it's broken. The 510K process is garbage. Like, just get rid of it. And I'm often like, and replace it with what? Like, we want to have things that are advancing, and we want new technologies because I want to stay healthy. I want those things in my doctor's office. And so I struggle with, like, show me what actually works better out there.
I think where people, and this is where I think, I certainly didn't know about the approval process, and I wonder what patients would think if they knew, because I think where people get caught up is this idea of you can't be any less safe and effective than what's out there, but it doesn't mean what's out there needs to be terribly safe and effective to still be out there, right? Is that where the breakdown is?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's things out there that hopefully, if they are demonstrated, if there's any safety risk or if there's any early alert that there's an issue, hopefully they pull it off the market. FDA has been really good at putting those early alerts up, saying, like, we've noticed a trend. There's, of course, class 1, class 2 recalls that happen that say, hey, this is not working as we said it would. And I feel a lot of folks, they feel that, okay, well, then we're essentially your guinea pigs, right? Like, you put this on the market and now it's shown these risks. And I get that. Like, as a patient, I'm like, I don't want to put something in me or my parents that is risky or that's going to have an issue. And at the same time, I feel like FDA does the best that they can with what they have, as we all are, right? When a company is submitting, it's like, there's a limited amount of information that we can have in order to submit and get that device through. And there's always, as I said, there's never 0% risk. I actually won't work with any company that's like, this is 0% risk. There's no risk to our device. And I'm like, that's a huge red flag, because everyone knows that there's got to be risk. So.
No, I was going to say what you're saying, Allison, bring it back to women's health, because the difference you're talking about is reasonable accepted study versus real world evidence. And when 8 of the 10 drugs that have been pulled from FDA clearance in the last, decade have been because of side effects that were unexpected in women because women weren't included in the trial, there's a difference between acceptable study size and then what happens when you put that device or drug into the hands of real people with reading glasses and, chaotic lives and everything else.
Yeah, I think that to that point, I mean, we certainly at ABIG, we are working with clients that are innovators, from big companies and small companies. And a lot of them, you hear them talk about the importance of the FDA, Yeah, we have to get through. Okay, yes, that is a hurdle. And you have to get through it and you need advice. But to your point, Lara, what ends up oftentimes happen is they're not thinking about the post FDA, the post market time. They're not thinking about what they need to do to actually get their product or service or their product rather commercialized, accepted by payers. So, I wanted to ask you, Allison, if a startup founder, someone that has a more limited type of experience in starting a new device, what is one of the most common misunderstandings or things that they misunderstand about how the FDA works, and then what the actual post FDA process is going to look like?
Most common misconception, I think that they think it's going to be really fast. Like, so we've heard the 510K, we've heard it's a 90-day process, right? And that's calendar days. And they say yes, and there's likely to be a hold period in there where they come back and they ask you questions, and you have 180 days to answer those questions. It used to be multiple holds. So, there's the medical device user fee amendments, which allows FDA to collect user fees in exchange for, an understanding that there's going to be a certain timeline for these things, which has been very helpful, because it used to be that it could languish for years, right? And companies couldn't even last the entire regulatory process at FDA. So now yes, there's a 90-day process for your 510K. There could be 180 days that you're working on answering their questions. And you don't have 2 rounds, right? Medufa 3, I think, is where they had 2 rounds of questions. So it could take over a year. And now it's, 180 days plus 90, hope potentially. And that's a long period of time, right? I think a lot of companies are like, oh, we have everything we need, and it's going to sail through FDA. And there's a lot that goes in, depending on the complexity of your device, right? So if there's software, cybersecurity, FDA just updated their requirements, or their, what they need for human factors testing. And as you mentioned, Lara, like real world evidence is a big thing. So if there's any sort of use in other countries, or if you've collected any data that FDA would need to make their decision, all of those things need to go into your submission, or can go into your submission, and FDA is going to review it, right? I think the first time, when you look at the old 510Ks back, because you can get the Freedom of Information Act, there's some that are FOIA'd. They were 10, 20, 30 pages long, right? So the FDA has been regulating these devices for 50 years. And so they were very short. It was really a pre-market notification saying, FDA, we're about to sell our device. Tell us if you want to, know anything about it. So that was 50 years ago. And today, submissions are thousands and thousands of pages long, right? Because the complexity is there, and because FDA needs to review it to make sure it's as safe and as effective, or if you're a de novo or PMA, that you are safe and effective.
That builds in another layer, though, of complexity and expense for startups, because you do not go to the FDA without an FDA advice team, right? You're hiring a CRO or somebody, and you're forking out money for that. I mean, I get it, but it's a real, 100,000%. We can't be taking unnecessary risks. But when you're sitting on this side of it, and you have runway and you're burning money, like everybody you have to pay to get you to that pre-sub meeting, it financially, and it creates an incentive for companies to find ways to slide under regulation, to make less claims, to figure something out, or to go looking for, UK or EU as an alternative. I don't know if you have seen much of that. Or
yeah, I think the global regulatory strategy is really important. I think talking with folks like Adam early on and ABIG, like having an idea of what your market's going to look like. I often will say, yes, you're talking to me, as your regulatory person. Are you talking to someone who's in reimbursement, or what else? What you need to think about the long term, because it's expensive to get through FDA. It's going to take time. And oftentimes I'm like, it's not the consultants actually that are the most expensive. It's the testing, right? It's what sort of EMC, electrical safety testing are you going to need to do? Are you doing biocompatibility? Is a patient contacting? Are you being implanted into a patient? Therefore, you're going to need a lot of testing to support that. And then what comes after, right? Like you make it through. And I've unfortunately seen companies just close within a year after getting like this very novel technology. Even things that, you know, have de novo granting that make it through are just so excited, and then it shuts down, right? And it's such a bummer. It's like, oh my gosh, this amazing tech that was really going to save lives is now put on a shelf somewhere.
I think that's a good point, and that's one of the things that we argue about all the time. Not you and I argue about. We you know, make an argument for.
Fist fight the other day about
we fist fight.
Like, no way.
Yeah, no, but it's this idea of like, people think the FDA is like the big bad hurdle and they have to get through that, and they do. But then what they forget is like, okay, great, you've got a device that made it through the FDA. Well, now an insurance payer will not pay for it.
Or you have to scale the manufacturing.
Oh, I'm not even that yet. I'm at a point of like, you've got a device, you've done some studies to get through the FDA, and now you want to say, hey, I want to sell this thing, and you don't have an insurance company that wants to pay for it because none of your endpoints in your studies are demonstrating not only that it's safe and effective. You have to do that to get to the FDA, but what are those important outcomes that are going to move the needle for a payer? And that's one being CMS. And here's the other kind of funny thing about CMS. CMS is statutorily charged to focus on Medicare beneficiaries. Well, beneficiaries being most of them over the age of 65, and those with disabilities, those are able to get Medicare. Did I say Medicaid? I meant to say Medicare if I said Medicaid. So like we're
I don't know. I
CMS
stopped
Medicare.
listening years ago.
Yeah, okay, I know. Especially my class. When you took my class, that is true. But anyway,
Medicare, it's old and sick people.
Exactly. You care for the elderly, therefore it's Medicaid. You give aid to the poor, therefore it's Medicaid. So we're talking about Medicare. So for devices that are targeting that population, if you don't have studies that have that population in it, then that is something where Medicare may not want to pay for. Now, there's some policies that are being worked on now that if FDA approves it, Medicare will also approve it. We'll see what happens. There's some press releases out. That's all we'll say right there. But we'll see what happens. But then that's just Medicare. What about United Healthcare? What about Aetna? What about the Blues? You know, all of them also have these decisions about coverage. And then beyond coverage, there's coding. Then beyond that, there's payment. Like, so there's
adoption, right? There's workflow. Like, it can be all cleared and great, but if doctors think it's dumb or it makes one more piece of paper for them, not having it.
Exactly. And so, Allison, I appreciate what you said, because there is this misconception that I'm going to get to the FDA, it's going to be fast. And it's like, listen, you bought your ticket to get on the airplane to go on a very long multi-month vacation to Europe, and it's with your in-laws. Okay.
I like my in-laws.
Well, I like mine too, but a lot of people, like, I love my in-laws. You know, Lara, you know my.
I know, and I love my in-laws. I hope they're listening. Hi,
but it complicates things, right? Like, there are expectations that are a little different when you're traveling with your in-laws.
This is true because they're older, and so, you know, I forever am having to remember my mother-in-law's pillow for her back.
A pillow over what?
For her back.
Oh, I thought she said
like she leaves that thing everywhere.
That's what she said. I'm like, my God.
Or like, Celia, pick up your pillow, right?
Okay, I want to shift gears because we've only got like 10 minutes.
Okay.
But this is an important piece here. So oftentimes people are not thinking about AI as a medical device, or they're thinking about AI as like this great panacea of like all the things that are going to fix healthcare. And I just wrote this op-ed last week about like a bunch of students going to graduation and then booing, you know, anytime someone mentioned AI. And I'm starting to see now multiple companies, I have experience directly with some of them, that have lost money and revenue because things being AI'd and people losing their jobs. So what are your thoughts, Allison, when it comes to AI from a medical device standpoint? Because software as a medical device oftentimes has some AI components in it. Is it something we should be applauding? Is it something we should be very fearful of? Where do you think it's going to take us? Is it going to make us less or more stable?
My thoughts are kind of all over the place, but I was also very fascinated by so many like graduation speakers talking about the power of AI, and all these students like booing it. They're just like, ugh. Like, Gen Z is not a huge fan of AI.
Despite using it to get through their term.
Right, exactly, right. But
Right.
it's seen as sort of like this evil. And I had a teenager say like, "Oh no, I'm not a screenager," and I was like, "Oh, I like." She's like, "No, I leave my phone at home."
Yeah,
A
they're called
screenager.
screenagers. And apparently Otto's generation is called iPad kids because he was in first grade when COVID hit, and they're called iPad kids because they don't know how to
Understand an iPad.
not look at an iPad.
Well, he does always ask you for extra screen time. I know
What do
that's
you
a
think he's
bargaining
doing
chip.
right now?
Yeah,
I
that's why
warned
he's not on the
him on
podcast.
recording under penalty of death. So he knows that if he doesn't bother me until we're done, he might get YouTube time tonight. Which is also another that's like the seventh circle of hell. YouTube. Anyway, back to AI, and I just want to throw in there that I'm relieved that you cannot AI drugs into the vagina.
That is true. Yeah, I have not seen it.
I've never seen anyone AI that. Yeah.
No.
Sure. So to that point, Allison, what are your thoughts?
On that note, yeah. I think, well, here's my thoughts about AI use in medical devices, because I've helped quite a few of them through FDA, get their de novo granted, get their 510K cleared, and working on predetermined change control plans, because there's changes that might happen daily with this device, or maybe monthly. You're going to update your algorithm. And so FDA is now trying to think of, we don't want to see a 510K every single day because you want to make a change. What are the changes you're going to make? And what are the guardrails? What's the testing you're going to do to update it so you don't need to submit a new 510K? So there's a lot of FDA has been really trying to keep up with here are the new guidelines, or here's the guidance document. Here's how we're currently thinking about it. And I think AI absolutely has a place in healthcare, right? As I've just said, there are many devices that have gone through. FDA has a whole website now, or one web page that's just all the AI enabled devices. I think what companies have to be careful of is if it's not really using AI to generate an output, then is it just an algorithm, right? A lot of companies will have used either AI or LLM to train the device, but at the end of the day, it's a locked algorithm, and I don't think FDA has cleared or approved any that are unlocked, right, or that are able to change over time. I'm blanking on, what is that called when it's unlocked? Adaptive, I think. Yeah. See, that's how very few of them have actually made it in front of FDA. But for any authentic, or FDA is still trying to get their minds around those things. But if you have an AI enabled device, don't just throw an AI into your submission or in front of FDA if you think it's just as sexy for the investors or for post-market purposes. If AI is confusing to the reviewer, it's going to slow things down for you, right? So if you have an algorithm, which a lot of devices do, stick to that. Why make it more complicated than it is? And so I think maybe we're seeing the pendulum come back from AI, everything is so cool, and everything that has AI on it is going to get funded, back to what's actually important. We want to get through FDA. We want to actually get market adoption. If people aren't going to adopt something that says AI, then I don't know, that needs to be part of your strategy.
That's very, very good point, because all investors want to hear. I mean, it's a joke, right? You see all these memes and videos now with people walking in and saying, "Oh, it's my doorbell." People walking in and saying, "Oh yeah, I've got a thing and it's got AI," and the investors are like, "We don't even care what it is. We'll give you money." But and I was told recently by somebody, if you don't have AI as part of your product, then just hunker down in the boat, fire everybody, and wait till the storm is over. But the flip side is, be careful who your audience is, right? Because when you're talking to the FDA, no, you don't need to add extra stuff that's confusing. You have an AI trained algorithm that is fixed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, your point about hunkering down for the storm. I mean, over 60% of investment is going into AI related healthcare technologies right now. That's accelerated. However, the studies are showing it's accelerated. But I'm hearing from a lot of people that they're like, "Whoa, are we too saturated? Do we have too much controls from the EHR level? If you're talking about AI embedded in with EHR tools." Is that you're hearing people argue about it, and the graduation ceremonies or boo about it. But now there's also, I think I'm seeing now from a political perspective, people are getting pretty pissed off that their electricity bills are going up. And these I mean, here's what's happening in Northern Virginia and DC and Maryland. So my electric bill there is $1,100 a month. It used to be last year, same house, $350, and we live there half of the time of the year. It is $1,100. We don't have anything new. We're not even there half the time. And when you email the companies or you hear about it in the news, people are saying it's the AI data centers. Okay. It's not going to take too long for people to be paying a lot more and or lose their jobs, or to hear their sons or daughters that they spent tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to school. That's going to create some type of backlash. And so I do think that there's going to be a bit of a, maybe not a full pendulum swing, because I agree with you, Allison, like there's a lot of AI promise and I think it's true. But I also think that the infrastructure itself kind of surrounding it or buttressing AI has the potential to be a bit of a problem as well. So I think it's a space to watch. So as we're kind of wrapping up, I wanted to, just ask you really two questions. One, we ask everyone about the instability in the healthcare system and your hope or not for that. We'll get to that one. But I wanted to see if some of our listeners are a doctor, a nurse, or a patient that's sitting in hospital right now, and they are using a medical device, they probably have not really even thought about it. If they're using that device, what do you want them to know about that device? What's something you'd want them to just kind of...
The doctor or the healthcare provider? I would like for them to know, or maybe I'll tell a quick story. I'm sorry.
Sure.
We only have a few minutes. But I asked my doctor recently, I went to the dermatologist and I asked her, I was like, are you aware of this new medical device that's out? And she was like, no. And so we had this long conversation about it. And she was like, I need to go check that out. Right. So I think I would love for them to, once they have the new device, or honestly, sometimes it's the hospital won't, pay for the device. Right. So she's like, and they might not know that it exists. They don't know that if the hospital is going to incorporate that into their workflows. But maybe it's just like learning more about the devices that are available. And I have two physicians that are on my advisory board, and I'm like, how do you learn about new devices? And they said, honestly, it's at the trade, like when we go to the big conference where all of our friends are, and then we hear like, what are you guys using now? Like, what should I now start to, pull into my practice? They're like, that's how we learn about it. Or patients come in and say, hey, my friend's using this, or I've heard about this. And it's the ask your doctor about, conversations. And they love that. I was like, do you hate it when people are like, oh, I Googled this and I found this thing out? They're like, no, if anything, it's helpful for us if people are coming to us and saying, can we consider this device for me? Or can we talk about this because this might be something that's useful for me? And so it's maybe just keeping an open mind. That's maybe what I'd love for them to know about it, is like, maybe what you're using right now isn't the only thing that's available. And maybe there's other devices or other things that you should think about. So that's what I'm trying to do at Bluestocking Health. And I feel like they're mostly just silly videos and stuff of like, again, there's a medical device for that. But I feel like people, I love it when people are talking about it. So, yeah.
Very cool. Last question. Is healthcare so unstable that it's not fixable?
No.
Okay. Adam's so unstable that it's unfixable.
Adam's
true. I don't know if there's a medical device for that, but so
no. Sometimes
there's a tongue compressor, which could give you a splinter, and you could use it to poke your eye out.
True. Good point.
Everything's a medical device. I often think of like global issues. I think of, the gun problem in the US. And I'm like, there should be a medical device for that. Like, couldn't there, like, we have the technology. I digress. So I feel like there's unstable things in this healthcare. I talk about it a lot, right? Like there's, when you're trying to get to market, when you are trying to get paid for, your device, or as I said, like things shut down because it just didn't get market adoption. So I think that there's a lot that could be stabilized. And I feel like having those conversations, having this podcast, I mean, just even talking about it and getting people to not just think in their echo chamber or only listen to their echo chamber is so important, right? Because maybe, and I think about, there's a lot of influencers out there and these wellness influencers that are saying, hey, your doctor doesn't want you to know about this. And I'm like, yes, they do.
They do.
And so
that's a whole, we can go on about that on another day.
Forever. But I talked about, I was speaking at a conference, and one of the things that resonated with me was, influencers are being doctors, right? Or trying to be doctors on social media. And it was a room of physicians and caretakers. And I was like, and doctors need to be influencers. Like we have to kind of shift and reframe to get some stability back, because oftentimes those are the voices that we want to be hearing from, right? It's like, what does my doctor think about this? There's a lot of really great content creators out there that are medical doctors that I'm like, you guys know what you're talking about. And I love amplifying their messages as well.
Well, it's so great to have you on that note. We're going to amplify this message, and so we appreciate everything that you're doing. We appreciate your support. We love your podcast. We love what you're doing. And we're just so grateful to have you on today. Lara, last words?
Thanks, Allison.
I totally caught her off guard. It's awesome.
I was like, you're great. This was really fun. And I like your t-shirt. And I'll see you at LSI next time or somewhere else.
Love it. And I know that you said you have some meatloaf or something in the oven.
I'm making meatloaf, man, on a cucumber boat in a sea of pasta.
I don't understand that.
It must smell amazing over there. That's all I can think of.
I don't understand all that. But hey, it's so great to have you. Thank you. And for those of you who enjoy the podcast, please like and follow. We are at www.unstablevitals.com. You can find us on where you get your favorite podcasts as well. And until next time, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for tuning into Unstable Vitals. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us for more unfiltered conversations on the pulse of healthcare. Connect with us on LinkedIn or visit us on unstablevitals.com to stay in the loop.